It's the 22nd of April, 1915, Ypres, Belgium. Lieutenant Martin Greener hears the attack before he sees it. It's a faint, sinister fizzing, almost as if the muddy earth under his feet is boiling. Peering over the parapet, he watches in horror as a low, greenish-yellow bank of smoke uncurls from the German lines. What fresh hell is this, he asks himself. Greener's mind has been so racked by his time on the front that his first thought is that he's witnessing the spirits of dead soldiers coming back to life. But as he blinks his way back into reality, he realizes that the Huns have found some new form of attack, and that it's already working. Carried by the wind, the toxic fog moves like a tide across no man's land, sinking into shell holes, flowing around torn tree stumps, and pooling into every dip. From his position on the bulge of the Allied line, Greener can see the strategy. If the Germans can buckle this section of the trench, the road to the Channel port will be wide open. In an instant, orders are barked down the trench. They are vague at first, and it's clear that nobody knows what's happening yet. Then, the men start to cough. First, just one, then dozens. A scent like a strong bleach stings Greener's nostrils. Instinctively, he pulls out his handkerchief. It's been soaked by the relentless rain, but he holds it to his face anyway. His eyes begin to water and sting. The soldier next to him begins to double over, clawing desperately at his throat. Instincts says to get down on the ground, but the vapor is heavier than air. Within minutes, it is pouring into the trench like water into a well. Squinting through the tears, Greener can see the cloud envelop the trench line for miles. What Greener witnessed that April afternoon was a new kind of warfare. The Second Battle of Ypres became the first large-scale gas attack in history, and, tragically, would not be the last. From 1915 onward, chemical warfare detonated what few ethics would remain on the newly modernized battlefield. In a war already defined by grinding attrition of trench lines, commanders on both sides were desperate for anything that might break the stalemate. The Germans were 100% focused on getting to the sea, and places like Ypres, Esnay, and Picardy all sat on the route to the Channel ports of Calais and Dunkirk. If they could get there, they could cut off the flow of British supplies. Gas seemed to be the best way to unseat an entrenched enemy without the suicidal costs of mass frontal assaults. Of course, the 1899 Hague Convention had explicitly prohibited the use of poison in warfare, with nations agreeing that it was far too barbarous. Nevertheless, in April 1915, at the Second Battle of Ypres, the Germans opened 5,700 gas cylinders, releasing chlorine gas across the Allied trenches. By crossing that line, the Germans normalized a new level of cruelty and fear. Allied soldiers like Lieutenant Martin Greener had no training to help them deal with this deadly new tactic. More importantly, they didn't have any equipment to protect themselves. In most cases, they had little choice but to flee or hope that the wind would change. This would open up massive holes in the lines that the enemy could then exploit. Back in the trenches, Greener can only watch as the smoky tendrils of gas slide their way through the winding trench lines. A change in the wind has brought some gas away from him, but he's not about to take his waterlogged handkerchief away from his face for a moment. To his left, a French colonial unit pours out of the mist. They're in a complete panic, faces ashy, eyes bulging, hands at their throats. Gassing is illegal, a war crime. As far as Greener knows, there isn't a single gas mask to be found in all of Belgium. With no other option, he starts making his way back toward command. As he weaves through the muddy trenches, he sees soldiers frantically urinating on scraps of cloth, praying that the ammonia will help to dull the burning skin. Most, unfortunately, are already beyond help. Men cough until they retch. Some cough up blood. Some even do the unthinkable, rushing out of the trench in an attempt to get to higher ground and away from the gas. Greener records watching in horror as the men break the only known rule of trench warfare, but is shocked to see that nothing happens. There is no machine gun fire, no shelling. The Huns are letting the gas and the wind do all of the work. "Out of the trench, quickly," he screams. Greener knows that eventually there will be infantry, but in the meantime, they can use the toxic smoke for cover. It's not until he reaches ground level that he sees it, a 4-mile wide gap where the French line used to be. Somewhere behind it, German infantry are waiting for the cloud to dissipate. Then they would pounce. It's important to understand that the Germans didn't fully understand how to use chlorine gas at the beginning of the war. They didn't really know what it would do. As such, they chose not to shell the Allied forces with artillery on that day in April. Later, however, this would change. Not only would armies start delivering gas via shell, but they would double up the gas with artillery and machine gun fire, dramatically increasing the terror and the death toll. From the beginning, gas was intended to be a casualty producer. Officers at the time firmly believed that 10,000 injured men could be far more useful and damaging to the enemy than 1,000 dead. After all, wounds and burns required evacuation, beds, nurses, surgeons, transportation, and convalescent camps. Every blinded or blistered soldier rippled out into the enemy's rear areas, jamming the logistical arteries. Only a small percentage of gas casualties died quickly, but the panic and resulting injuries could decimate an entire battalion in minutes. By far the biggest effect was on morale. Chlorine was just the beginning. Within 3 years, the Germans had redefined their chemistry and perfected their tactics. On the Chemin des Dames Ridge in May 1918, Lance Corporal Talbot Mohan would come face to face with something deadlier still: phosphine. It's now May 27th, 1918, 2 a.m. in the morning. Lance Corporal Talbot Mohan sat on the Chemin des Dames Ridge, writing in his diary. The bombardment had been going on now for hours. Mohan estimated that the Germans had dropped 3,000, maybe 4,000 pieces of artillery altogether. The losses were already heavy. Massed together in these frontline trenches, attacking him and his fellow Brits must have been like shooting fish inside of a barrel. He didn't blame General Duchesnay. His ridge had been hard won. But with half his men shell-shocked and the others almost ready to break, Mohan didn't know how long they'd hold out. Then the gas began to arrive. By now, every man on the front could tell the difference between shelled gas and shelled artillery. The shells rarely whistled, and when they hit the ground, it was with more of a plop than a bang. Hands fumbled at satchels. Moans of terror gave way to the din of straps and buckles being fastened. Mohan writes how he could feel the rubbery kiss of his mask just as the faint whiff of mouldy hay began to hit his nostrils. It was phosphine gas. The world suddenly shrinks to fogged glass. Breathing is hard work now with the mask on. Each inhale through the filter is a drag on his chest. His fellow soldier's voice becomes muffled and distant. Terror mixed with anxiety. Had he inhaled the gas already? With phosphine, you couldn't even tell until hours later when you began coughing up blood and foaming from your ruined lungs. "Get ready," he screams. His own voice echoes in his ears alongside the coughs of the men who'd been too slow with their masks. Through the grey phosphine mist, he sees a line of German soldiers approaching. With their masks on, they almost look like an invading alien force. He taps the man in front of him, 2 short knocks. "Fire," he bellows at his men. For the 10th time that month, the trench begins to erupt in an orgy of blood, fire, and screams. Mohan's brush with phosphine revealed how far gas had evolved. By the middle of the war, 3 deadly agents dominated the battlefield: chlorine, phosphine, and the dreaded mustard gas. The first, which Lieutenant Martin Greener faced at Ypres, was chlorine. With its greenish-yellow cloud and heavy bleach stench, it was the easiest to detect, but you would still need to act fast. It would burn your eyes and throat in an instant, leaving you feeling as if you were drowning while standing up. The goal, of course, was to cause panic, so that front lines would collapse. Phosphine, however, completely changed the rules. Its odour was far fainter, and it appeared white or greyish, not unlike other types of battlefield smoke. It was particularly insidious because it didn't kill you right away. You'd get a tickle in your chest at first, but hours later your lungs would fill with fluid, your blood pressure would spike and then collapse, and your entire pulmonary system would break down. Finally, there was mustard gas, the so-called king of battlefield gases. Rather than just attacking the lungs and eyes, it could remain on the surface for days. Contact with exposed skin would lead to yellow-tinged blisters, 2nd and 3rd degree burns, and ultimately blindness. Victims rarely died immediately either, but suffered in pain and agony for weeks on end. In some cases, all 3 gases would be used at once. Thanks to the writings of these survivors, we know exactly what it was like to suddenly find yourself in the midst of a mustard gas attack. To tell that particular story, we must return back to where gas attacks began: Ypres, Belgium. The 3rd battle that took place there, later known as Passchendaele, is often considered one of the bloodiest and most demoralising of the entire war. This time, it was the British who were on the attack. Lance Corporal Harry Patch of the 7th Duke of Cornwall's Light Infantry began to wade forward with his Lewis gun team in a world already ruined by years of shellfire. It has been raining now for weeks, turning the trenches into winding rivers. The mud is now so thick that it can easily swallow up men, horses, and even tanks. But as bad as it is, the mustard gas is worse. Patch records how he and his team have taken to wearing their masks almost full time now. The same goes for their gloves. Touch the wrong piece of equipment with your bare hands and you might end up losing it. Though he could never show it, Patch records how he lived in a almost permanent state of anxiety. Breakdowns are a daily occurrence. To try and break the stalemate and recapture Ypres, he and his men are now being ordered to move into position for a push on the German lines. Suddenly, the sound of distinct whistles breaks the atmosphere. From there, Patch's memories are a little hazy, but he describes a bright flash, the smack of a blast, and hot blood pouring down his throat. In all the fear of the gas, he's forgotten that there's so much else that can kill you out here. Passchendaele dragged on from the 31st of July to the 10th of November 1917. Throughout that war, nearly 1 million soldiers had died in the 3 battles that took place around Ypres, many from gas-related attacks. It's important to remember that gas frightened the mind as much as it would wound the body. Medical officers began to recognize gas fright or gas neuroses as a real threat to the military's ability to function effectively. So powerful were the psychosomatic effects that a single shell or misinterpreted smell could set off coughing fits, chest pains, or even temporary blindness in troops. To make matters worse, the very devices that could save one's life reduced one's vision while claustrophobia continued to ruin one's mental health. Gas discipline kept men alive, but it also kept them on a hair trigger. In the end, chemical weapons did not decide the war, but they certainly reshaped it. Fatalities were, in fact, rare, but they were also not the point. Most gas victims carried the war home in their lungs and eyes, and in scarred skin and short breaths, and in the hospital records that sketched into the mid-century. To be gassed in the First World War was a lifelong injury to your body and your mind. In most cases, it was bad enough to make soldiers question whether the term survivor is really appropriate. Poor, blimey, that was intense. Thank you for making it this far in another video. And again, you might notice I am in different surroundings. I have moved house, but I'll be moving house again in probably 3 weeks. So for now, I've got a bit of stability to create these videos, and I hope to get more of them out over time, but thank you so much for sticking with it. It's been far too long again since I've been able to get a video out, but I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please do smash the like button, add a comment to let me know what other topics in history you want me to cover, and if you're new, please do subscribe. It makes a huge difference to the success of the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.